thank you for joining us at this webinar. I'm very pleased that we have Thierry Lepercq on the line, who's going to give a presentation pretty much up to date following Sunday's exciting news in the oil markets. So he's going to give an up-to-date presentation around hydrogen and obviously some of the impacts that we'll see regarding oil, but also some of the longer-term drivers that are really driving what we both think solid growth in hydrogen finally. So for Thierry, for those of you that don't know, is well known from the sort of solar markets. He founded Solar Direct back in 2006, which became a leading solar developer, developing projects across the world. And that business was acquired by Engie, and he subsequently became the executive vice president for technology and innovation there. And he was recently now launched Soladvent, which he'll cover a bit about what they're doing towards the end of his presentation. And he's also written a book, as you do, called Hydrogen is the New Oil. And I've had the benefit to read it, and it's a very, very good book, a great synthesis over the last 10 years, I guess, of the energy transition, and certainly sets us up for what we think is going to be an exciting next chapter in the energy transition as we look to decarbonize what is the vast bulk of the energy markets, which are obviously heat and mobility. So with that introduction, I'll check how many people have joined us so far yet. So we're over 100 people, and we have probably another 100 or so people going to join us today from the 400 odd people that signed up. So with that, Thierry, if you want to take the reins, and I shall disappear into the background. So over to you, Thierry.
Thanks, Nadim, and thanks to all for being with us today. I'm going to talk to you about a shock, and obviously we've seen a shock, a market shock. We've seen a market shock just a couple of days ago, and that was the oil market shock. And I'm here to talk about another shock, which is going to come to the energy market, and that's the green hydrogen market shock. Now, lots of people like the word transition because it's something smooth. You move from one world to another smoothly from point A to point B, and the fact is that it's never like that. It never happens that way. You move from one station to another with a disruption, and that disruption is a shock. I'd like to start with a first word on the current situation that we are facing with. A couple of weeks ago, the French president has a problem of ladders. Not just because he's short, because he was invited to do something that lots of French presidents like to do. It's a pilgrimage. It's a pilgrimage to the Mer de Glace. The Mer de Glace is this French glacier that is common to all, and a very common subject to all French people. And the Mer de Glace is about to go away. It's about to disappear, and what is going on today is that we have a very visible mark just in France about how the climate change is going to change everything. And that is a very strong message that the French president wanted to send. Not that France is really doing what it should on this, but that the situation that we're talking about is an emergency. Now, what is the emergency about? And I'll just give you one figure. You have plenty of figures and data on this slide. One very simple figure, which is 7.6%. 7.6% is what the United Nations tell us that we need to reduce our carbon emissions on an annual basis if we want to hold on the Paris Agreement. 7.6% means 2 billion tons of CO2 being removed annually. And this is what we need to do. And one very simple thing, this won't happen with business as usual. The only way to do it, by the way, if you look at the chart on the right-hand side, is that it's all about fossil fuels. Nothing will happen if we don't replace oil and gas and coal massively immediately. And I know some people are saying, yes, we can, we should by 2050. No, no, immediately. How do we get out of oil and gas immediately? That's the question that we're being faced with. Now, there are two options to it. One is to hope for something to happen. One is to hope that taxation is going to help things. And the other one is to look at megatrends. And these megatrends, when they crystallize, they become a market shock. I'm going to describe this green hydrogen market shock because it's what is just going to happen in the next couple of months and years. And I'll start as a new oil person. I like to consider myself now an oil person. As Nadine was saying, I wrote this book, Hydrogen is the New Oil. It's not just a figurehead. It is the reality that hydrogen today stands to replace oil, and that will come with a shock. The first shock that we're going to talk about is the upstream market shock. Upstream market shock comes with a very simple message: competitiveness. Competitiveness. Energy is all about commodities. It's about a resource play, about how much oil or gas resources we have, and how much they interact on the market. What we've seen in the last couple of days is that Saudi Arabia, being the lowest cost oil producers, is saying, I want to kick US shale out by pricing them out. We are seeing the power of markets. Now, hydrogen is, and we're talking about in this case, obviously, green hydrogen from solar, is still considered as a distant perspective of something that will be maybe competitive one day, 2050, some studies are saying. And the message I'm coming here to all of you and like to discuss with you is that the time is now. We have this massive disruption just ahead of us with hydrogen generation from solar and wind, electrolysis, being in a position to replace, to compete with oil and gas with their prices, without even considering a carbon tax. And that comes with very simple components. Well, first, a word on the resource. The resource, we know that solar resource is infinite. Just think that water, in just 1 liter of water, you have half a liter of gasoline equivalent. That shows how much energy there is around. Imagine the ocean, half of it is water. Now, what we have is this unique combination of super cheap solar and wind, mostly solar. $15 a megawatt hour is what has been achieved in most geographies. In many places across the planet. And what we have today is the combination with another distinct factor, which is the collapse of prices in electrolysis. Just ahead of us is the construction of several gigafactories, one of them probably being announced by the European Union in a couple of weeks, a couple of months from now. We're, as far as my company is concerned, working on another one with various stakeholders. Think that today, if you have a scale, a gigafactory of electrolyzers, and you have the proper scale and you have the proper vertical integration, I'm talking about existing technologies. In this case, we're mostly talking about alkaline electrolysis. You can have the $200 a kilowatt, which together with a solar I was mentioning, are the components for $1 a kilogram solar-based hydrogen. And $1 a kilogram, and you see that on the right-hand side on the map, is the equivalent of $7.5 per million BTU. So sorry, it's a lot of numbers, which is roughly the break-even point of LNG in Europe. Natural gas, imported liquid natural gas, liquefied natural gas from the US or from the Middle East comes at a break-even cost. Now the actual market cost price might be a bit lower today, but on a long-term perspective, that level of $1 a kilogram shows that we can compete. This will compete. This is now going to compete with LNG and with the right quantities. As we speak, there's about 100 gigawatts of projects in Spain, solar projects, which have gained their permits and grid connection rights, which means that we are right now at a point where this resource is about to be uncorked. Now, the immediate question that comes after, if we can produce that, say in Spain, Morocco, Portugal, or who knows, in Chile and other places, how can we bring it to the markets? And we have great news here. We have great news because existing infrastructures, in this case, I'm really focusing on pipes and underground storage, is just there, just available. And what seemed outlandish just 12 months ago today is fully supported by the national gas TSOs themselves. And this is an incredible shift that we have witnessed in the last 12 months, is that the likes of Enagas in Spain, Snam in Italy and other places, GRT Gas in France and some other OG in Germany, are now saying it loud, we can and will convert our pipes to hydrogen, partially and ultimately, why not totally? Which means that the massive amounts of millions of tons of hydrogen that can be produced in distant locations in Spain, again, Morocco, or can be already today reusing existing infrastructure. And this is very important. This is basically, by the way, destranding thing. And this is another market shock in a way, because it's a flood that we can expect with the rapid conversion with fairly limited investment in refurbishing these midstream assets which stand ready for use. This is a focus on Europe, but the same exists with in other geographies. And when it comes to shipping, some people might ask, how do you ship hydrogen? Ammonia is a preferred way, and as we speak, there are major today companies that are studying it for the export, for instance, of Middle Eastern green hydrogen to Japan. The third market shock that we're seeing is customers. A couple of weeks ago, I was with a senior executive at a large oil company, and they were, that lady was telling me, Thierry, we have a problem. So what is the problem? Problem is our customers. Our customers want zero carbon product, gas, oil, gas or electricity now. They want it now, and obviously we cannot deliver it, and we are in a bind. We are an oil company serving, and they were especially mentioning the case of the pharmaceutical industry, and they cannot satisfy it. There's a pent-up demand, massive demand today for zero carbon energy. Now, obviously, if that zero carbon energy comes at a premium with high costs, with complexities, customers won't buy it. But if you have a green product at the price of a great product, we have a certainty today that it can change overnight. I'll give you a few examples, and this is based on existing work and projects that we're working on. Chemicals, fertilizers, today based, by the way, mostly on the so-called gray hydrogen produced from methane. Today, there is the capacity reusing existing infrastructure, same thing, as existing factories, etc., to reuse the same products, the same infrastructure to deliver green products, to make green fertilizers, for instance, or green steel, replacing coking coal in steel furnaces to replace, then again, a carbon-based material. So that's the an examples in industry. Another very interesting example is power generation. I'm not at liberty to disclosing the names, but today we're working with several utilities which have either gas or coal-fired generation, and they see this availability of massive hydrogen as a paradigm shift whereby they can refurbish their own facilities. Now, think about what you have today from the guys from Ansaldo, from GE, from Siemens, and some others, which are already offering to those companies the possibility to refurbish their gas or coal-fired generation into hydrogen generation. We're talking about burning the stuff that lots of people think it would make sense because that would be a precious product. But obviously, if it's $1 a kilogram, no problem with burning it, especially if you have large quantities. So think about that. Delivering base load and heat, by the way, not just power, to district heating and cooling at current prices or lower with a zero carbon fuel, replacing in this case all fossil fuels, possibly in a matter of a few years. A last word on mobility. Lots of things have been discussed about how mobility is great, wonderful for hydrogen. Hydrogen requires fuel cells, new cars, and fueling stations. For cars, what we're seeing is the takeoff is taking some time. We have not that many cars around. We have a strong belief is that some markets are going to take off quicker than others, and that is not cars, passenger cars. We think that, and what we're seeing is that long-haul transportation has a strong case for hydrogen. Why? Because you don't want to stop your truck for 1, 2, 5, 10 hours to refill your batteries. It's much better to have it with the fuel cells. And what we have also another very interesting market, which is getting ready to shift. It's shipping. The shipping industry today is considering moving from that's the real leapfrog, by the way, not just from fuel oil to natural gas, which is being considered by some shipping companies today, but the real shift to green ammonia. Green ammonia meaning a product that can be burnt in existing engines. Last but not least, finance. What we have today is an amazing lineup of investors who are saying, today, I want to get out. I want to get out of fossil fuels because these are not just stranded assets. They're just going down the drain. What we've seen in the last couple of days is record lows for oil companies. But even before that, look at this index that I'm showing. The index of the Standard & Poor's exploration and production, even before the crash of this week, was down close to 90% from its highs in 2014. So the oblivion of fossil fuels on the financial oblivion is much more advanced than most people think. And conversely, people are, I'm talking about large scale, very big investors and pension funds also are looking at where can I put my money? And we know that this is the shock, the utmost shock, because money can move in instance from one asset category to another. What we have today is already renewables attracting lots of capital, but renewables come with some issues with variable power, which is what is the value of a solar profile in Chile or in California and soon in Spain. When you have a lot of solar, probably not much. However, if you can convert that to hydrogen, you have basically a permanent oil well. And what we have today from some of the largest infrastructure investors in the world is a very strong conviction, is that the only way you want to put your money at work in energy is to base it on something which is going to be both fully decarbonized, zero carbon, and fully dispatchable. Anything short of these two things will not be a worthwhile investment. Now, I'd like to end with just a few words about how it works. We see the key for these market shocks to happen in a vertical integration. Then again, we have a model. That's the oil and gas business. Oil and gas business works then again with upstream, midstream, and downstream. That has not been the vision of most renewable energy people, who tend to see their product or their action as a sideshow. What we are seeing here is that it's not just a value chain, it's a systemic value chain, taking care of the three pillars that matter in energy, which is energy security, competitiveness, and decarbonization. So what we have today unfolding under our eyes, and I'll be glad to interact and go for some Q&A. We are just about to see these market shocks coming together. Europe is showing the way, but the Middle East, Asia, and after that America are coming along as well. Get ready for a rough and very interesting ride for the benefit of mankind. just a few words about myself. So you have I started this company a year and a half ago, wrote a book, and we are advising companies and various value chain players overall to make that happen as both an advisor and a principal. Nadim, that was my presentation. I don't know if I kept on the timing that you assigned me, but that's about it. And if there are questions and answers, I'd love to interact with the participants. I don't know.
Yeah, hi there, just coming in. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your presentation, Thierry. It was very interesting and yeah, great, very succinct as well. So we have a lot of questions coming in. Let me just confirm that, yeah, we'll be sharing the slides afterwards. A question around capacity for $200 per kilowatt CapEx. Is that CapEx including the balance of plant or just the electrolyzer?
Yeah, that's including EPC, yeah, and balance of plant. Yes, yeah, that's the target that you want to achieve to achieve the $1 a kilogram production cost, not delivered, and obviously, so you need to have the electrolyzers themselves at a significantly lower level if you want to reach that $200 overall. But I can answer how we can reach that as well, because obviously it's a major question. Actually, it's a central question because solar, most people agree on it. Actually, not agree, just look at it, see it. The demand and the other things are easy to. The big question is how you get to that $200 a kilowatt, and that's the worthwhile question.
Yeah, yeah. I mean are there any sort of comments around that? Do you have to specifically alter the production of the solar plant, or?
No, something very important to note is that in order for this to work, you need $15 a megawatt hour, everything included, which means that if you are transmitting power, if you're generating a power in one side and have an electrolyzer somewhere else, and then you need power transmission, the cost of power transmission in most geographies is already around $15. So that doesn't work. That cannot work because you cannot have free power forever. So the only way you're gonna have this work is to have a joint location of power production, availability of water, by the way, as well, and electrolysis of water and injection into the gas grid, not power grid.
Yeah.
So that's the way you get to those. Now, lots of people are probably wondering, hey, how does it work with 2,000 hours? The question is, if you have low enough cost of electrolyzers, the fact that you're running your electrolysis equipment 2,000 hours a year and not 6,000 or 8,000 hours is okay. What is essential when you get to very low electrolyzer prices is not the cost of the electrolyzer, it's the cost of the power. So you are better off using your electrolyzers less, I mean, like 2,000 hours, rather than more with more expensive power.
Got you, yeah. I mean, you mentioned water, and obviously Spain is quite scarce in terms of any sort of comments around water. There's a question in from someone concerned about water resources.
Sure. It's interesting to see that if you take a standard desalination plant like the super large desalination plant which are being built in the Middle East right now, one typical of those plants would be enough to power 500 gigawatts of hydrogen electrolyzers. So it's not to say that water is not an issue, but if you're in a desert area, or scarcely where water is scarcely available, the availability of water, provided you're close to the sea or the ocean, is not a problem. And we've measured that if you want to desalinate, which might be the case if you want to go to Morocco, maybe in southern Spain, the added cost of desalination is $1 per megawatt hour. So if you want to have, if your target is 25, just $1 at most will be covered by water.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, I know there is some research going on to the desalination, to the use of electrolysis of salt water, but I think that's another sort of technology that has to be developed. A question from Artur Majewski. Existing natural gas pipes are very dirty, so injecting pure hydrogen from electrolysis to such contaminated pipes does not have sense. How do you maintain the purity of hydrogen, and any comments around purity, I guess, in general?
The purity question is more a question of storage. And it's true that many storage capacities, especially those involving oil, by the way, rather than gas, come with serious issues about combining hydrogen with former oil, for instance, caverns and things. As far as the pipes are concerned, this doesn't seem, and there again, it remains to be seen, but our interactions with a large number of TSOs across the value chain have shown us that this is not an issue. That the existing pipes can be converted to hydrogen. By the way, hydrogen piping is not a new thing. There are 7,000 kilometers of hydrogen pipes around the world, and they work perfectly fine. So it's not like it's impossible. And then again, what is very interesting is that a year ago, lots of people were saying there's an issue because the molecule is very thin, it's going to escape. What about the qualities of steel, etc. And the conclusions of those studies that have been conducted at such companies as Enagas, SNAM, OGE, and even GRT Gas are that yes, you can reuse most of the pipes as such. What you need to change though is the network equipment and some of the valves, the compressors, and other things which need to be adapted to hydrogen.
Yeah. Comment or question from Jean-Christophe Poussin. Fully agree with your approach regarding LDV and HDV. Do you think the low oil prices will postpone the development of hydrogen?
This is a very interesting question. For me, the people who are looking at the oil prices and saying oil prices should be high for hydrogen or renewables to prosper are misreading something. You have, and this is what I'm describing in my book, by the way, you have two logics in energy. You have an inflationary logic, and that is the case of many energy sources, certainly the case of nuclear, obviously, record holder in inflation, but as well to a certain extent for oil generators. Today, the cost of new oil wells, whether that's shale or offshore, etc., is significantly higher, far higher than older oil wells, and it keeps growing. Even though the price has gone down, but the cost of oil wells, of finding oil. Gas is a bit different. Obviously, today, you can find gas quite cheaply.
Yeah.
Renewables, solar in particular, and that's the same case for hydrogen, are fundamentally deflation. The costs are going to go down. So if we're competitive now, we're going to be even more competitive tomorrow. So just a relation, $1 a kilogram equals to $42 a barrel. What we see today is that the $1 a kilogram is going to go down, not necessarily being divided by 3, etc., but it can be divided by 2 in a matter of 10 years, which means that you're going to have a deflation. For instance, solar is going to go to $10 a megawatt. So those guys who know about tandem cells, we were talking about tandem cells yesterday, and I think know that these innovations and higher efficiencies on the cell side are going to lead solar to go further down, $10, and who knows, some people are even say potentially $5 a megawatt. Now, if your raw material is just going down that way, hydrogen is going to go down. Now, the question is, it's competitive. Is it just going to improve vis-a-vis oil? And lots of people should really think about on a permanent basis. I want to reduce the cost on a permanent basis. It's not I want to take advantage of the vagaries of markets with prices going up. No, I have to ruthlessly cut costs. This is what happens in technology in microelectronics, which I think should be our model in this case, rather than the traditional energy business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the traditional energy business, fossil fuels, is obviously created by, by the earth. There's a finite limit. So as we're drawing down upon ever harder to reach, pockets of oil, the price is increasing, but it's the technology that is, limitless in terms of the technology curve and driving down. So I guess the term you used yesterday, I think, was deflationary. I think in terms of that hydrogen is deflationary. Question around the global gas or the EU gas network and its capacity. So can it accommodate additional distribution for the energy requirements of replacing fossil fuels, in addition to the current demand on the network supply? So is there much latency in the gas grid at the moment? Or are you really talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on geography. Some countries today, I'll give you the example, the Netherlands has decided to disconnect all gas users from the grid by 2030. So Hassouni in the gas TSO in the Netherlands is today confronted with the perspective of having its pipes, in theory, going to zero usage. France is nearly in the same situation. The electrification drive of the French authorities is sending us a very strong message that gas volumes are going to go down. And by the way, the European Union, when it sets this objective of zero carbon, saying we don't want any fossil gas anymore. And by the way, the European Investment Bank today has instructions not to finance any of those projects, including natural gas. So the message today is that those volumes are going to go down significantly. And already we have so-called spared assets, which are available. I'll give you an example. We were discussing with the TSO from southwestern France. There are 3 pipes between Bordeaux and Toulouse, and they're saying we can very easily convert, keep one of those pipes for natural gas, have one of those pipes for blending, and the third one for pure hydrogen. So the availability of natural gas transmission is there. The transmission between North Africa and Europe is also quite quite strong. We have a significant connection between Morocco and Spain, 5 gigawatts. A huge connection between Tunisia and Sicily, 36 gigawatts. So just using part of those things could allow for the transmission of hundreds of terawatt hours or millions of tons of hydrogen through those existing pipes already. So it's the issue of capacity is not there. Obviously, there could be some bottlenecks. For instance, there is issue when we discuss France and Spain of the Pyrenees, and there's a bottleneck there.
Yeah.
There's a project which was meant to reinforce the connection between France and Spain, which was abandoned a couple of years ago. Now it's resurfacing. Possibility also to really dedicate some of those pipes entirely to hydrogen. That could be the case between France and Spain.
Yeah. Okay. What role do you see for the other side of the camp, so the blue hydrogen production globally, especially in jurisdictions where they have CCS experience like Alberta in Canada? From an Oleg Podporin.
Okay, I'm going to be very blunt. There's no such thing as blue hydrogen, and that for mathematical reasons. If you consider that A is the cost of fossil fuels, and B is the cost of steam methane reforming, transforming, and C the cost of CCS, and there's no way that A equals A plus B plus C. In mathematics, that's a rule. If B and C are higher than 0, there's no way that A, B plus C, which is so-called blue hydrogen, is going to compete with A, which is fossil fuels. The only way you have fossil fuel parity, by definition, is not taking a fossil fuel product and bringing very expensive, hugely expensive industrial operations. The only way it could exist would be with immense subsidies. Now, who in their right mind would subsidize a fossil fuel asset, a costly fossil fuel asset imported from places which are dangerous and hostile to Europe, versus a non-fossil fuel asset? Then again, $1 a kilogram from Spain or Morocco is certainly a better option than something imported from countries which are fundamentally hostile to Europe. We have to see, by the way, the geopolitics of it. Lots of people are ignoring that and figuring today Europe is surrounded by suppliers of energy who are hostile, including some cases militarily hostile to Europe. So we have to take that into account as well.
And a question, I think, around the electrolyzers that you're sort of planning to use. What sort of size platforms are you looking to use in terms of alkaline electrolyzers?
I don't know. The question is the fact production of electrolyzers or the
I think
hydrogen
the scale of the project, the scale of the electrolyzers in the project, or
well, obviously the bigger the better. But solar electrolysis and solar are very similar. They're modular. You can have small solar projects and you can have small electrolysis project. Now, obviously, the bigger the better. You have the scale effect. You know, a 500 megawatt solar park will cost you per megawatt 20, 30, 40% less than a 5 megawatt project. Same thing with electrolysis. You want to have scale, and then again, scale is not as complex as it is for other, I'd say for offshore oil or things where you can get or nuclear or whatever. It's just they're modular. So doing a 1 gigawatt solar project actually is not that complicated. It is a process based, or doing a 10 gigawatt, ultimately a 10 gigawatt solar project. So and the same goes with electrolysis. You want to make sure that you have something which is very, very modular, process oriented, mostly, and then again, using tested and bankable technologies, not banking on new technologies. The people who've done that in solar with thin film, with lots of funny things that were invented in Silicon Valley and some other places, have wasted their time and money. Let's focus on what is today scalable and bankable, and that's crystalline silicon solar on the one side and alkaline electrolysis on the others.
And I mean, yeah, you favor alkaline electrolyzers as opposed to PEM. Any comments about that?
Well, PEM comes with supposedly flexibility advantages or performance, whatever. It certainly comes with added costs. Added costs because you have expensive materials that go with it, and if you want to cut costs ruthlessly, and one points the cost of whatever platinum or some other things is not something that is under your control. There's also something about the sophistication and complexity, and then again, vulnerability of the technology. Anything, you want something robust. That's the thing that is, by the way, most people who are technology enthusiasts are often disappointed when it comes to solar, renewables, energy, and will be disappointed with hydrogen generation, because there is a strong premium to the dumbest technology, if I may say.
Okay. Around costs, there's probably 3 or 4 different questions around costs. So just to sort of group them all together, obviously you've mentioned $1 per kilogram. Gaurav Dutt says, seen reports suggesting, $3 to $4 per kilogram and above. So is this true? And what is your sort of timelines for a sort of $1 to kilogram? Again, a similar question around, do you have a reasonable estimate for hydrogen costs and the prices in a 2025 to 2030 time scale? So yeah, maybe just elaborate around your sort of cost curve and how you achieve it.
I have a personal experience. That is that of solar. When in 2011, Soladvent was doing projects at $100 or euros, 100 euros a megawatt hour. People are saying, no, it's not possible. Actually, I invite people to look at videos of Soladvent, which are available on the web, and see interviews where I was interviewed in 2011, 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And we're saying, I'm quoted there saying, we are on our way to do $70 per megawatt before 2014. People were laughing. You look at the numbers of the IEA, they were 3 times higher. They say, no, it's not possible. It won't work. We were doing it at Soladvent. It's not talking about it. We were doing it. We were doing it in France. We were doing it in India. We were doing it in Latin America. We were fucking doing it. So what I'm saying is not, the issue is not to discuss about things. And by the way, it's not Bloomberg New Energy Finance or anybody else who's going to do these things. It's business people, entrepreneurs, and they're going to make it happen. Now, this is the reason why I'm not talking from the position, and this is very important. I'm not talking about the position of an analyst or a book writer or something. I'm taking this position as an entrepreneur. We, as a company, together with partners, are going to deliver the thing and sign contracts. And this will be seen in the months ahead. Not to say that it's going to be delivered in 2020. We need, obviously, there's a timeline to do that. But our vision is to say that first projects being online by 2023 and the $1 a kilogram done 2025. So that's our timeline as entrepreneurs.
2025. In terms of, you mentioned, I think briefly, subsidies at some point, maybe it was actually in reference to the blue hydrogen route. What kind of policy instruments are you factoring in? Are there any factors around the carbon price? Any comments that you'd like to make around carbon pricing, or any other sort of policy supports or political supports that you think you need in order to get to $1 per kilogram by 2025?
You don't need, I mean, we need volume. It's a chicken and egg situation. People say, yeah, volume, cost, volume, etc. What we're saying is that the markets, this is why I'm talking about a market shock. A market shock with subsidies is not a market shock. It's a subsidy shock. It's a government shock. What we're talking about here is a shock which comes, by the way, a lot of it through financing, because money is shifting and money is backing those projects because they're seeing that's the only sustainable, I'm talking financially sustainable assets that you can have is something that, again, I want to hammer the thing, zero carbon and dispatchable. Anything that is not zero carbon is a death sentence to investors. Anything that is not dispatchable is a death sentence for investors. And most of them are getting to know it. So the money is there, the money is backing those projects. So what is essential today is how you convince everyone and their mother, and this is, we're just, but this, in the market, financial market chart is just one of the corners. Look, for instance, I invite everyone to look at the stock price of NEL. NEL, including the last 2 months. Yeah. NEL is a listed electrolyzer company from Norway. Look at it. Stock prices multiplied by 10 in the last 2 years, and it's with, and you guess what? It's holding well in the current crisis. So what we have today is the shift of money. And when it comes to to government, we don't want government to buy our stuff or to sell. I mean, the idea that government should be there just to buy your stuff, that the way, well, feed-in tariff or that worked well very early on for solar, and today are just useless because they're putting higher prices to something that should be much lower. So if we want the volumes, let us trust the imagination of entrepreneurs or value chain people and go volumes. Now, what should be encouraged ultimately, all these things are going to exist because people are going to sign long-term contract, going to sign contract to buy this. And so let us encourage, I'd say verbally, local governments, utilities, industrial users to say, buy the stuff, get together, be bankable, build consortiums, and ask for the stuff. For what we want today is a big movement. If we can start it together, say, we want the stuff. It's not just we're protesting, we're this, we're asking the government to do this. I'll use the Kennedy words, don't ask the government what it can do for you, or what you can do for the country. We are at this position. The moonshot thing today for hydrogen is not asking for carbon taxes. Carbon taxes is hiding things. And by the way, for those who are not aware of it, there's a carbon tax today. It's the cost of capital. If you look at the cost of capital, we were discussing that yesterday, but the cost of capital today for an oil company is in a range of 15% and growing up. Today, these companies are delivering yields of 10% or more, which is crazy. If you're in a renewable, let's forget about hydrogen. If you're in the renewable assets, today, if you look at Ørsted and some of the rates at which solar projects are being financed in Europe, you're close to 3 to 4%. The difference between 3% and 15% is your carbon tax. That is a huge difference in the cost of capital between what is sustainable and what is not.
Yeah. Couple of questions around the cost of transport. If you were importing hydrogen and it was made, say, in the Middle East, what would be your cost addition for shipping hydrogen in, so on $1 per kilogram?
Shipping, I'll do something very, if you compare pipes and shipping, piping and shipping for oil is more or less the same cost. Piping and shipping for gas, the cost is 1 to 4. Liquefied natural gas, talk with liquefaction and then regasification and transport transforms the cost of transmission of transporting gas is 4 times bigger than it is for, so there's a strong premium for pipes, hence the fact that you have in natural gas very long pipes. Russian Siberian gas comes to Europe 5,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
That's the reason why you have such long pipes for gas, not for oil. For hydrogen, the difference is even bigger. It's 1 to 10. The cost of piping is 10 times lower. Why? Because the liquefaction is minus 253 degrees. The volume of hydrogen is bigger. And if you want the only proper, by the way of transmitting today, and that is probably the way it's going to happen because it's existing infrastructures, it's well controlled, it's not fancy technology that yet to be proven, it's ammonia. But transforming hydrogen into ammonia, putting it into an ammonia tanker, bringing back the ammonia tanker, and if you want to reconvert to hydrogen, then you're doubling the cost.
Yeah.
So $1 a kilogram will come $2 a kilogram. Now, if you have transmission, gas transmission, depending on the distance, you can, if the distance is short, it could be as low as $0.1 a kilogram. Now, if it comes from all the way from the Middle East, but there again, we're thinking today not only on North Africa, but potentially Saudi Arabia and Egypt being connected via pipes. Because remember that today you have a piping project, a huge piping project, which starts from Israel, which wants to transmit natural gas from Israel through Cyprus and Greece and Italy, which overall would be about the size, the length of those pipes that we have from Russia. So having a pipe like that, bringing, for instance, hydrogen from Egypt, or why not potentially from northwestern Saudi Arabia, is something that could be considered as an option. Now, if you're in Japan, I was in Japan just last week. If you're in Japan, there's no option. You're not going to put pipes from Australia through all the rifts and the earthquake-prone areas. You're going to have ships, and those ships are going to be ammonia. The Japanese are already working on ammonia tankers, bringing that from the Middle East and Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we were on a call earlier this morning with the vice president of one of the shipping companies, and they are, seriously looking at ammonia as well as from a propulsion standpoint for deep ocean shipping, and that seems to be accelerating. Question, or not question, more of a statement in terms of hydrogen is a poor energy carrier. It'll be competitive as a local resource, but it will take decades before it can compete with other carriers due to serious technical issues.
What carriers?
Yeah, such as I guess serious technical issues in the introducing hydrogen into the gas lines and the aquifers or the underground storage. Is something around some of those engineering challenges and whether they are
A word about storage, it's important. It is true that the molecule is thinner and comes with other issues. So aquifers, which is being referred in the question, which are proper storage means for natural gas, are yet to be proven for hydrogen. What is certain though is that salt caverns are extremely highly present all across Europe, by the way. You have salt caverns, immense salt caverns resources in Germany, but you also have some a lot of in France. You have not even talking about the U.S. Utah has the equivalent of 10 times the world consumption in salt caverns there. So there is a resource which is already available. Obviously, another point, it's true that considering the volume, the physical constraint, physical nature of hydrogen, you need 4 times as much salt cavern capacity that you need for natural gas. So that's a fair point to say that it's not equal. You need more. But then again, the cost of underground storage is just such a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of any other form of storage. And I don't know what carriers were mentioned in the question. If the carrier is the electron, there is no, I mean, an electron costs 10 times as much as a molecule for transportation and 1,000 times more for storage. So there's no competition with electrons. And if the vector that is being mentioned is something carbon-based, you don't turn solar power into a carbon-based thing without going through a hydrogen and an extra process of methanation, for instance, which is very complex, or methanol as well. Some of these things that have been considered based on carbon needs a fair, low-cost CO2 source, but then the cost, but even the cost equation is just unworkable.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, we recently visited Store Energy there in Paris, and got good understanding of the opportunity within salt caverns, and certainly there seems to be a strong, long experience in terms of storing gas underground anyway. That so yeah, I agree. A couple of questions around centralized v distributed approach. I guess you have maybe covered that around the cost piece, but any comments around sort of distributed?
No, it's a very important point, because lots of people think renewables should be local by definition. I was in Japan I was saying there was a conference on renewable energy, and I was saying, hey, Japan imports 92% of its energy. Why wouldn't it be able to import renewables? Why should renewables, which cost a fortune in Japan? I mean, the cost of solar power is around $120 a megawatt hour. It's outrageously expensive. Why on earth would you not import the product at a fraction of the cost from Australia, for instance? Mm-hmm. And when you ask the question, say, of course. And there's this ideological version that renewables is local is nice, it's fun, etc. In the end, it's not nice. It's how much it costs and what is the capacity for it to ensure energy security. Anything that is just nice and costs the taxpayer a fortune has to be sidelined immediately. And people have to look at exactly the cost structure. One point, renewables in Europe, in most of the European countries, in Germany, no way you're going to have renewables in Germany any more than there is today. No way you're going to have renewables in France. France, the solar and wind resource, and most importantly, the cost of doing renewables in France, disqualify energy generation in France for the next 100 years. People have to come to terms with that, and that's okay, because what we're talking about is basically replacing one import, oil and gas, with another one, which is a clean one, from countries which will be more, well, we have more choice, by the way, for the sources, and especially try to choose friendly countries rather than unfriendly or hostile ones.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a question around the economical sense of the business model based upon power to hydrogen to power. Again, I think you probably covered that.
Well, that's an important part, because some people are shocked by the idea of efficiency loss, because they're saying, hey, I have 100% thing, and then in the end, I have, say, 35 or 40%. So I've wasted, quote unquote, 60% of the stuff. Now, if you wasted 60% of something which is infinite, clean, and very, very cheap, it's okay. Yeah. It's not, because hydrogen has been considered as the platinum of molecules, that it should not be burned, and that this issue of efficiency is one. I mean, this is an emotional argument and not a rational one.
In terms of storage, I mean, did you mention ethanol, but someone's asking about biomethanol as a solution, I guess, for storing liquid hydrogen. Biomethanol?
Anything that uses, that wants to convert, I mean, the rationale behind using hydrogen and using it in synthetic fuels, for instance, is to say, I want to use existing infrastructures now, like existing cars today, put in cars with regular engines. The reality is today that the world is going electric when it comes to cars. Not everyone is aware, but I encourage people to look at the numbers. Last month, 8% electric cars in France and Germany, 25% in Sweden, and 50%, over 50% in Norway. This is coming electric. Now, fuel cell vehicles might come after that. It's our conviction that, not because fuel cell vehicles can have longer range, but ultimately, if you have millions of cars, for instance, in France, if you have 20 million cars charging at the same time. It's going to be 5 times. You're going to need to have a power grid and a power generation to meet that, which would be absolutely ridiculous. So you're much better off having some form of fuel that is. But that fuel should not. Let's not add carbon to that just for the sake of saying we don't want to change our habits. We can reuse existing turbines without a carbon-based product. We can reuse existing pipes without having it. And if we have electric cars on one side and fuel cell cars on the other side, and we're bound to have them because they're going to be so much more efficient cost-wise. I mean, electric car, for instance, costs on a TCO basis already significantly less than a diesel car. So it's so let's look at what is coming in terms of infrastructure, and let's not try to do complicated things that would be supposedly bridge things. The bridge, forget about the bridge. We want to get to the end point immediately. That's the case for most infrastructures. You don't want anything. The bridging thing is always a bad idea when it comes to risk and costs.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we've covered quite a lot of questions. Storing power in the form of green hydrogen to enable to follow continuous electricity during the night. Yeah, so I guess hydrogen to power again. So whether gas turbines versus fuel cells, is there any sort of comparable economics between those two?
The world and power storage is, sorry to say, something stupid. First, because you don't want to store anything, because storage or inventories cost much. I mean, ask a car company how much inventories is their ideal number, and they're going to come to you with a very simple number: it's 0. Because storing costs. I mean, it doesn't mean that it should not be done for security reasons or other things, but it's. Now, when it comes to storing excess power or storing power, and people say it's energy storage, batteries. This is funny because today you have, that's the numbers from Bloomberg Energy Finance, you have 22 seconds of global and power consumption with battery storage available. 22 seconds. The projection by New Energy Finance is 52 minutes by 2040, 20 years from now. Now, you go through the winter time with 52 minutes of storage. Do you even go through the night with 52 minutes? No. So the idea that you're going to store something and then it's going to be okay doesn't work. The only thing that you want to have is permanent dispatchable supply. And yes, if you can store very cheaply months of it, just like we're storing natural gas today, why not? But there again, let's look at something that stores the minimum. What we have in hydrogen is not a storage medium. It is an energy medium that happens to come originally from power, but forget about the power. What matters is the molecule and all the things that you can do in industry, in energy, and in transportation.
I guess that answers that. A couple of questions around, again, transport. So one around, obviously, yeah, we're seeing, hydrogen being suitable for more powerful transport applications, trucks, construction vehicles, mining vehicles, etc. Obviously, we've covered a little bit about ships, and we're actually doing a hydrogen shipping conference in November in the UK in London. So we're doing a lot of research around that, and there seems to be some sort of strong movement there. Beyond, I guess, sort of deep sea shipping, where people are obviously looking at ammonia, trains and planes. So SNCF are speaking actually in September at World Hydrogen Congress, and planes. We did have a couple of talks on those, but yeah, there are potentials there. Are you looking at those, or that's another?
Well, trains is not true. Most trains today that transport people go with electricity.
Yeah.
And that electricity will come from hydrogen. Now, hydrogen trains is okay. One train consumes 70 tons of hydrogen. You can have 1,000 trains, and that would take a lot of trains to get 1,000, and that would be a tiny little fraction So it's let's forget about train. Planes is interesting. I'm personally interacting with a great entrepreneur, Val Mitavkov from Silicon Valley, who started Zero Avia. Zero Avia has this incredible ambition to make commercial airplanes with hydrogen by 2022. That's a very early stage. It's not going to be a 747. That's going to be the smaller planes with shorter range. Which with it, by the way, comes a different business model of the idea of having very light, silent planes taking people from point to point. So it's a fundamental vision of enforcement. So what we have to see, by the way, is not just hydrogen replacing oil, this hydrogen as well introducing new business models. And the business model of green ammonia replacing, for instance, fuel in shipping is one of them. Reinventing air transport with smaller planes that are silent and or at least low noise and zero carbon based on hydrogen. It may be a very interesting way, and Zero Avia, for instance, which is a very interesting company, is working on it.
Yeah, actually you mentioned a point there where you said noise, because you could see the sort of more distributed aviation model working if obviously they're very, very quiet planes. It takes away a big barrier there. I think we'll just take one final question, and thank you everyone. We've had a tremendous amount of questions, so probably over 36 questions. What membrane separation for methane and hydrogen in the gas grid? Membrane separation?
Yeah, that's a question about blending. Lots of people are saying you're going to blend hydrogen and natural gas, and then in the end, if you want to get back hydrogen, you have to put membranes. Tests have been made by SNAM, for instance, Italy, about that. Now, that comes with this idea that you're not going to have 100% hydrogen pipes. The common wisdom today among most TSOs is that let's not waste our time with a bridge or transition thing, which would be blending. Let's go for pure hydrogen pipes. That makes more sense. By the way, as well, with the idea that if you have blending, the question is, what is how do you sustain a constant or a stable rate of blending? And obviously, if you have more hydrogen during the summertime, for instance, or then you could have issues with the percentage of hydrogen in natural gas going up and down. So you're ultimately much better off with pure piping in terms of both security, regulation, and costs.
Okay, I think that's it in terms of time and questions. So thank you very much for everyone for listening today. The presentation will be available online, as will a recording of this webinar shortly. So I think within 12 hours. So tomorrow we should have it up and available for you to listen again. So. Thank you very much to you, Thierry. It was great to have you, and we look forward to seeing you in Paris at the World Hydrogen Congress. And thank you to everyone else, and stay healthy and stay safe.
I'll try.
Yeah, take care. Bye bye.
It's bye.